turn my phone off.
He just
Call the meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the September 21st, 2021 Post Falls City Council meeting. Shannon, note that all council members are present with the exception of Mr. Malloy. I would assume he's going to be here. I know he's been under the weather, but I thought he may be here, so we'll see if he shows up in a bit. Under ceremonies, announcements, appointments, we have a couple of announcements. The annual Shoes and Brews 5K run is Saturday, October 2nd at Kiwanis Park. The race starts at 2 o'clock and is a non-competitive, self-timed event. You can register online at postfallsidaho.org. Also, just like to announce that the Idaho Chiefs of Police Association notified me that the Post Falls Police Department has successfully completed the Idaho Chiefs of Police Association accreditation process. During an on-site inspection by members of the Idaho Chiefs of Police accreditation team on July 21st, your police department was found to be in compliance with all accreditation standards set forth by the Idaho Chief of Police Association. This milestone achievement was accomplished after hundreds of hours of preparation by the Post Falls Police Department personnel. Our special thanks goes out to Chief Knight and his staff for taking this opportunity and putting forth their efforts in meeting the accreditation standards set forth by the Idaho Chiefs of Police Association. This is an accomplishment that you and the citizens of Post Falls can be proud of, as it demonstrates your dedication to maintaining a progressive and professional police department for your community. Once again, on behalf of the Idaho Chiefs of Police Association, we congratulate you and your city on this outstanding achievement. And it was signed by Frank Wyatt, Chief of Police, City of Caldwell. I guess all I can say is that doesn't surprise me. Yeah. I mean, we have been spoiled with the professional service and everything else that goes with not just the PD but our staff. So thank you both. I'll see Chief Knight when I see him out on the golf course. I'll thank him. I thank Chief McLean as well. Are there any amendments to the agenda tonight?
We have none tonight, sir.
Are there any declarations of conflict, ex parte contacts, or site visits? No. None? Would you please present the consent calendar?
Item A is minutes from the September 7th, 2021 City Council meeting. Item B is payables August 31st through September 13th, 2021. Item C is Britton Place Subdivision Construction Improvement Agreement. Item D is a Centennial Trail Bridge Maintenance Contract. Item E is Teton Meadows Subdivision Construction Improvement Agreement. Item F is Kootenai County Public Transportation City Link Agreement. And item G is the Gondo Annexation Agreement.
Any questions on the consent calendar?
I had a question on the item D, the Centennial Trail Bridge Maintenance Contract. In the memorandum, which I know is just a summary, it indicated that there's a 50% contingency in that contract, which I thought was off. And I couldn't really find it in the detail.
Yeah,
Is that just a misprint?
no, good evening, Mayor, members, council, Robbie Quinn, Parks Planner. Kind of filling in for Brian on this one, so I don't know all the details of that, but I believe just kind of with the lower bid, he just wanted to cover himself with, we had the engineer's estimate of 30,000, and then the bid came in at 11,800, and so I think he was just putting an extra contingency in that.
So it is 50%.
Mm-hmm. So he was asking for the 17.7, and then, but the bid was 11.8.
Gotcha.
And so it was a grant project, so our approved grant budget was 38,000. So.
Okay. Thank you, Robbie.
Any other questions? Thanks, Robbie. Good. Entertain a motion.
I'd move for approval of the consent calendar as presented.
Second.
Motion seconds. Further discussion. Roll call, please.
Malloy.
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Anthony.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. We do have one public hearing tonight, and that's the SMOC zone change. And with that, I will open, well, I should announce anybody wishing to speak. There's forms on the podium in the back. Please fill them out, turn them into our clerk. That'll open the public hearing.
Seems weird having one public hearing.
Yeah. Get used to that.
We should have had two.
Good evening, Mayor Jacobson, Council President Wilhelm, and members of City Council. John Manley, Planning Manager, here at the city presenting the SMOC Zone Change Staff Report, case file RZNE 6, 2021. So the applicant is Mark Latham of ML Architects, representing Donald Smock, the owner of these properties. They're looking to rezone approximately 1.45 acres from the Community Commercial Services zoning to the Urban Center Smart Code SC5 zoning district. Location of these lots are, as you see here, just on the northwest of the intersection of the Spokane interchange. It's southwest of 7th and Spokane Street, in the area hatched in red. Parcel information, the current land use and physical characteristics is as you see here in this image. It's mostly just vacant redevelopment site that's, there was the Hunter's site that burned down. It's been kind of remedied and cleaned up and scraped off. Other portions of older developments, and they do have the one coffee stand there at the very north. Water and sewer would be provided by the City of Post Falls upon any such development. So I'm going to go through a few slides before I go into the zone change criteria, kind of explaining the SC5, what it is, and kind of delineating it in the CCS to better understand the ask. What you see here is kind of a bulk and placement type table for the SC5 to kind of show kind of the disposition. You see here, these are actually pictures on the right from the downtown or the city center planning area. It's why Smart Code more or less came to existence. We had this plan for a downtown, of which later then we got Smart Code to help create the form and disposition of the built environment and help realize that vision of that city center plan. So you see here the principal building has a 4-story max and a 2 minimum. That's to kind of get that massing on the street. You also see a variation of lot widths from 18 feet to 180 feet for lot widths. So that assists getting some variations along the street, as well as you see that lot coverage of 80%. So you're encouraging some massing of the built environment in your downtown. Other pictures that kind of help kind of see what that vision was. These aren't from the city center plan. These are other pictures online. What you see here in the top left are images from that city center plan, where you can see where the goal was to go from your typical commercial, where you have your street and the building and back and the parking lot along the main corridor, to have the building actually fronting the main streets with the parking in the rear, making that built environment more of a presence along the street, as well as promote pedestrian safety and walkability along those corridors. You have a lot more conflict with cars in this type of environment on the top left versus the form and disposition there to the right. Here's some examples of some CCS type development, typical commercial. You have your more larger parking lots along your commercial through corridors. You see a lot of this on East Southeast Way and some on West Southeast Way out once you get outside of the Spokane Street, Idaho Street type area. You can see the large parking lots. Here's the workshop that went for the city center planning. In fact, you can kind of see on this picture here that there was a little finger, a part of the original city center planning area, and that kind of included the Hunter's site, both the west and east side of Spokane Street up to Southeast Way along Spokane Street. So looking at this site and where it's located, I guess it's to look at the city center plan, kind of understand the difference between the two built forms and kind of see which one would be best fit at that location, and then look at the zone change criteria and have all that in balance. So the 6 criteria, the first 3 here kind of all work together. You're looking at is it in accordance to the future land use map? goals and policies in the comprehensive plan, are they consistent with that? As well as looking at street classifications, traffic patterns, existing development, future land uses, and community plans. Kind of went over the city center plan. That kind of, the proposal would be consistent with that as far as the downtown plan. In the staff report, you did see that there was comments regarding the street classifications and traffic patterns that the proposed zone change wouldn't encumber those classifications. Going back to the existing development and things around the area, I'll go back some slides. You have to the west, you do have one single family home on the west side of Catherine. You do have some multifamily just to the west. North of this site, you do have auto sales, a gas station, some other commercial services and restaurants. And then on the east side, you have some mixed eateries on the east side. So SC5 would allow for a development pattern to be complementary to those uses around that area. Looking at the land use designation on the future land use map, it's business commercial. You can see here that the intent is to provide for a wide variety of general service, retail, light industrial, artisan manufacturing, a mixing of uses that can serve the residential, the regional residents. You can see here I have underlined the CCS. So the current zone is an implementing zone, as well as the SC5. It goes back to the earlier comment, at the end of the day, which one do we think best serves that location? The Southeast Central area, what this is the comp plan. You have your future land use designation. Those are some larger areas. And we have smaller, refined planning areas that allows you to kind of pinpoint specific goals of those areas. I have in red there some highlighted elements of that. You're looking to seek for opportunities to enhance commercial core in the Southeast planning area, including increased food and beverage options. With commercial, there's no guarantee that you'll get food and beverage options, but by creating a leasable square footage, you create the opportunity for that. You're also looking to develop patterns that improve pedestrian connectivity to the commercial core. I think I would argue when you're looking at those two built forms, the auto-centric model is a little more hostile and less pedestrian safe, has less pedestrian safety to it than the more form-based or smart code where you create more safer routes along that commercial. Here's the zoning that you see in the area. To the east of Spokane Street, you see that community commercial services zone. To the north, you see that. Currently, it's obviously that, so it fits in with everything that's currently there. But then at the same time, look to the south, you see the SC5, that's that purple. It would also be a logical extension of the SC5 as well. You see the R3 to the west and the R2. The proposed SC5 would not be incompatible with those other zoning districts. Here is the Post Falls Urban Renewal District boundary. What you see here with the star, that's that site within that boundary. Any redevelopment of that would provide additional tax base within that urban renewal, creating additional increment. Looking at some goals of the comp plan, you look to grow and sustain a balanced, resilient economy. For Post Falls, providing prosperity and fiscal health. A lot of this comes with diversity in housing and creating the appropriate zones at the right locations. Smart code and form-based code, you generally realize additional square footage of built environments. So you generally could realize a higher tax base out of a smart code development than you would in more of your Euclidean standard development, because you'd be using more for parking lots in your typical developments. Plan for and establish types of quantities of land uses, the Post Falls supporting community needs and city's long-term sustainability. I'd point to the city center plan of this and the direction of it. And once again, always aiming to diversify your zoning districts. Some policies. Maintain and enhance community level service. This is done a lot of times through impact fees. So with development, you would see impact fees addressing their impact on some of the bigger items. Foster long-term fiscal health of the community. I think I've kind of touched base with this already in some previous comments. Maintain and enhance residential quality of life. Provides opportunity for services within walking distance. So with the redevelopment of the site and potential of the mixed uses in Smart Code, you'd enhance the corridor. You're already seeing increased foot traffic along Spokane Street. I would believe that with development, you would see this promoting that even further. Kind of dovetails into the next one as well, promoting compatible and well-designed developments. In the staff report, you also saw the proposal being consistent with the other master plans and comp plans. The next policy directs directly to revising the zoning designations, considering the following. I've already touched base on the future land use map, compatibility. The staff report acknowledged the ability to provide the infrastructure and services to this, as well as the traffic. The last three criteria, you're looking at commercial and high-density residential zoning is typically along your higher classified roadways, this being right near an interchange in Spokane Street, would definitely be an area where you'd see your commercial and higher densities at a location of this in some form of form-based mixed zone. The next two really aren't applicable. They're not asking for neighborhood commercial. They may provide neighborhood commercial within a Smart Code mixed-use building, but you'd be looking at potentially other commercial. It's not an area you would generally see low density right near an interchange either, so it really is not applicable. Industrial zoning, it's not being asked for and therefore not applicable. Here's the agencies that were routed. Of that, the police department remained neutral on the proposal. Highway district, they had no comments, and DEQ said they had no environmental impact related comments on the proposed zone change. Any questions for me as I conclude the staff report on the criteria?
John, I'm going to have a question on parking, but I think what I'd rather do is wait until we hear the proponent's presentation first, so I'll ask you afterwards.
Okay.
Just got one quick question, John. I'm assuming the pedestrian traffic, you're not going to have any crosswalks on Spokane Street going east and west, but you'd have crosswalks maybe going north and south on 7th Street and encourage people to go up to the light on Celtice. Say if they wanted to cross Spokane Street.
There would be, and trying to go back to a better,
Which they wouldn't do.
I know Celtice Way would have one, and I can look for Bill. Bill would know exactly, but
Okay.
I would suppose you'd have, would there be one on Spokane Street there?
Bill, come on up, please.
Yeah, that would be my only question is, Spokane Street's so busy, would you just have crosswalks going north and south on 7th Street and just encourage the traffic to go up to Celtice, or?
Currently, we have a crosswalk.
Bill, can you step up?
Okay.
Yep. Currently, I do stand back quite a bit. Currently, we do have a crosswalk there at, sorry, I messed you up there, John.
Yeah.
We do have a crosswalk there just north of the, just at the very north end there where 6th Avenue joins in with the ramp. So there's a crosswalk there at Spokane Street, and then we also have a crosswalk the next block up at 7th Avenue.
Okay.
We would probably try to go ahead and continue to maintain those.
Keep that one then?
And,
Okay.
yeah, we'll keep those in, and we'll continue to watch for the safety if we have to put in rapid flashing beacons because of the active traffic. We're seeing so much more effectiveness and you know, people actually paying attention to them.
Yeah.
there. So, yeah.
I've noticed when it's busy, that's a tough place to cross from 7th over to the other side when you're going, you know, east and west.
It is, yeah, people aren't paying attention. We would probably keep those in just as, you know, as people might park on 7th Avenue and want to walk over here across the street or something, just to keep the
Okay.
whole circulation open. So we'll just do it and would monitor it for safety.
Just monitor it.
Monitor
Okay.
it for safety and make whatever adjustments would be necessary. So,
Okay.
yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Bill.
Only
Joe has a
question.
question for John.
Now, refresh my memory, potential for residential in SC5, what is that?
Well, the site itself for commercial and industrial, typically you'd have a minimum base density of 18 dwelling units per acre. Once again, smart code, the form-based, is designed to encourage rooftops to support the commercial that are right near the proximity.
Yeah, so the question is, and on SC5, it's got to be commercial on the bottom floor, right?
Yeah, in smart code, the way we adopted it is any SC5 that has Spokane Street frontage has to have non-residential uses on the main floor.
Then it could theoretically have 4 floors of residential on top of that, correct?
3.
3. Okay, thank you.
Does our code allow for 4-story buildings right now? I
Yeah,
thought
4 stories the max for an
I
SC5.
was thinking we were at 3. Okay. Thank you. Anybody else?
Actually, quick follow-up on that one too. So with residential on the SC5, the parking requirements, is that, I know we just changed that. I'm trying to remember, is it 1 spot per residence or is it?
1.5 per residence. now.
On-site.
Yeah, we also, for mixed residential, decrease the credit they get for on-street parking.
Right.
And so there's some of the developments we've realized in the downtown, we've tweaked it a little bit to provide additional parking.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, John. Applicant wish to speak? Name for the record, please.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners, Mayor. Thanks for letting me speak here tonight. A lot of these slides I think are going to be a little bit redundant because John did a good job. He
Mark,
covered
name for the
everything.
record, please.
I'm sorry, Mark Latham, 607 East 6th, Post Falls.
Thank you.
So this first slide here just shows the vicinity map, and I'm going to zip right over that because John went through that quite a bit, so everybody knows where it is. I want to touch on a few things that kind of some of the background on this. This is a project that we did in Midtown in Coeur d'Alene for the Smocks, who are the owners of the site, Pepper Smock, and they're local. They've lived here their whole lives, and they've done quite a bit of projects. And the projects they always do are nice projects. They're good quality, and they think very highly of the towns that they do the work in, which is Coeur d'Alene and Post Falls. And they're very, very interested in this project and doing something very nice. And so I want to just really stress that. And I know that doesn't have too much bearing on the zone change per se, but to give you a little bit of a background, that they are good quality projects. And here's a photograph of that same building. So here's the site. It's a fairly rough site, and now the restaurant is gone, and it's fairly decrepit. So I met with Pepper a few years ago, and we were looking at this site and a lot of different uses. And yeah, CCS zoning can take big box stores, medium box stores. They can take a sea of parking. The smart code is really what Pepper kept talking about, what he really wanted for the site, which was a very, very nicely high-quality mixed-use project. And something that leaves a mark on the town, we talked about the downtown that the city of Post Falls and the planning department had always talked about, something like they coined a pilot project, looking at really making something that's a downtown. You know, people say, where's downtown Post Falls? Some people say Celtice, some people say Highway 41, which sounds funny to me. Other people say Spokane Street, but that's just because I don't think there's any really defined downtown. And I think that is something that we need to look at and work on. And that's, like John said, that's the reason for that downtown study that was done a while back now, quite a few years ago now. So we looked at a bunch of different ideas, and all of these different ideas have a mixed-use component to them. So I'll flip through these very quickly, but you can see on the screen here there's some residential kind of tucked to the back on the west side or the south side. We felt very strongly about that because there is, in fact, residential. It's multifamily residential to the west there. Although, for the most part, this is a commercial downtown district. And so here's another option. And all the while we're doing this, we're really looking at trying to get continuity going, as my little mouse here, or my pointer shows, left to right and up to down, so that you could walk through this site. And good pedestrian continuity. We came up with ideas like this, and we came up with some concepts. And all of the concepts have always been a two-story type of an idea, the restaurant being maybe a one-story with a taller form, so that it has the appearance more of a two-story, but we would blend 1 and 2 stories. So it wouldn't be 3 stories, is never what we've intended. And this is the layout that we've developed or have today that we've looked at. And up on the top corner is the Terra Coffee, which would stay but be rebuilt, much better building. a smaller event center right there with some offices, and then a restaurant. And so it's 1-story, 2-story, and 1-story. Back behind here, we would do a 2-story walk-up apartment complex or townhomes. And we haven't quite decided on that, with parking in the middle. And I will touch on the parking. I think that is very interesting. But real quickly, just running through these slides, these are some of the looks that we're trying to pursue. So it's not hugely overdense, not many stories, not urban blocks that are filling the entire block with parking garages or off-site parking and things like that. Let me skip through this. And then just touching on what John did a good job with this too, is that this is the look of CCS. This is what it could be. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. We need those uses in Post Falls. This isn't Post Falls, but these are just medium box stores. This is a lumber yard. This is, you could have car wash, C-stores, auto service stations, lumber yards, and it allows it outright. I don't have to stand before you to develop it that way. And if this doesn't pass, there's good opportunity in the downtown for uses like that. I think we can do better than that, and I think the SC5 zone protects this piece of property in a sense, in a way, that would allow something that would be more like what we see on the screen there. So really, touching on the parking, I think, unless you wanted to ask your question, I did.
That's fine. It's just that it was
Yeah.
an issue during the P&Z.
Yep, and I'm going to open up this PDF here. I didn't make it into a JPEG, but hopefully this works. Yep, that works. It's a little bit hard to see, but what we worked on, Merle and I, and I'm sorry, Merle, I did it again. I didn't introduce you at the beginning. But Merle is the civil engineer on this project. We've been working very closely together. Up on the upper left corner, I don't expect you to read that, but what we've done is right here, this is a parking analysis for CCS zoning for if we were to design this project right here. And we actually just barely got it to work by 1 parking space. It's plus or minus 1 parking space. And so if we were at the CCS zoning, we could make something similar to this work. In other words, the reason I'm stressing that and I'm saying that is that this has the parking spaces outright for whether this is SC5 or CCS. To be fair in that regard, it's not quite accurate statement because we are utilizing the on-street parking as you see around these 2 sites here. So if this were a classic Euclidean CCS zoning, we would be underparked in the sense that we would not be able to count these on-street parking spaces. I think logically speaking, we have the parallel parking that's existing there today along by Terra Coffee. And we have this side street here that we've been working with the city that looks like we would be able to do some nose-in diagonal parking. And that's a substantial amount of parking spaces. The other thing we've looked at too is we could potentially do some diagonal parking across here and cut this building back slightly. So we're not concerned or worried about parking. Getting into the SC5 parking calculations, it is substantially lower. The total required is 134, and the total provided is 140. And so we're overparked for the smart code, and that's without using the shared reduction factor, which smart code allows us to do when we do mixed uses, and it depends. It's 15%, 20%, so you could figure about a 15 or 20% even less than that, and we haven't had to kind of go there, so to speak. And so I feel like it works. I think it's very effective. It's a good layout, a good design, and it fits with the downtown. And that's why that SC5 zone, I think it works very well. You know, there's been some contention about the smart code. It's complicated. It doesn't seem to work, or this or that. I can hear arguments about that. I guess out in the prairie, in the neighborhoods for these big housing developments that are very tight and very closely packed. I personally think that the smart code was designed and meant for right here, downtown, this lot. It works for it. Like John said, it meets the comprehensive plan, it meets zoning, it meets the future land use plan, it meets the downtown design, studies that were done a long time ago. It meets smart code, it works. So for this reason, I respectfully request that you consider the zone change from CCS to SC5. And if anybody
Mark,
has
I have
any
a question for you.
questions. You bet.
So let's talk parking again. So
You
the
bet.
parking on the west side of that project, That street basically, as you're heading south, goes nowhere, correct? Because
Correct.
you're gonna run into the freeway.
Correct.
It's not as if you're out in a normal, I guess, if you will, city street, worried about parking spaces. Just want to make sure, so that's dead ending basically to the
That is
south.
true. And that's why this street that turns into here, this is city right-of-way currently, and this would be required to loop around because of this one-way parking. Because you don't go this way and there isn't a loop going around the neighborhood that way. You dead end into Treaty Rock Park, or I think it's just a knuckle or a dead end there. So yes, it does need to loop around. And once we're into the middle of the site right here, this is two-way parking. So there's continuity both directions, both ways. You could loop around whichever way.
Okay.
But that is a good question.
I just, oftentimes, I'm not a big fan of the on-street parking, but if it's in a regular neighborhood, and that can cause issues, but in this one, I raise a question because it looks like that street is not used for a whole lot of additional uses.
It's a very, very quiet street, and it should stay as a very quiet street, so it should be a pretty safe place to park. We, with this housing that's on the backside, it should stay quiet. But yeah, it's not a thoroughfare. It's not connecting point A to point B. And I was really happy to hear about the potential nose-in parking there. As compared to parallel parking, everybody just struggles with that. It's not as easy in and out, so.
Oh.
Mark, one thing that concerns me, it looks like we still have cars going out onto Spokane Street from the coffee shop.
Yes, this is a tricky one, and this is a very, very specific requirement for Terra Coffee. They're 66 or 75% of their revenue is from drive-through, and that's very big for them. We've worked with, I think it's been Rob Paulus, I believe, and John, about this being a right-out only. It's not a right-in, right-out. It's not a full four direction, if I'm saying the nomenclature right. The reason there's a wider spot right here is that at the tenant's request to have a pull-off in case you need to adjust your things or wait for a big order and they can run it out to you, and other people can bypass. It's just a bypass lane. In other words, it's misleading looking. It doesn't mean you can turn left or right. And I believe they were looking at just a right out only, I believe, is the last I had heard. Okay.
So is that something that how do we make sure that happens? I guess I'm really concerned about, we've seen this happen, especially over on 41. We've had to make some adjustments because, people are people. They're going to want to turn left out of there.
I could have one of the three members here, gentlemen here, stand up to that regard, but I know personally that we've designed it this way. We'd absolutely have no problem with meeting that requirement of a right out only, if that needs to go into the record.
John, Warren, either one?
We were transparent with them. We said that because of the classification and the design of Spokane Street, that they wouldn't get a left out, they'd get a right out only. So that's.
But we don't have to build that into our approval or anything like that. That's something that can be done at staff level.
I haven't been informed we'd have to build that in, but I can look at.
Ward?
There's not really a vehicle to do that with a normal, this isn't a mixed-use zone where we have a development agreement where you might have those types of things, so you don't really have the vehicle to do that here. I do think as we look into site plan review, where you start actually getting into the design and building of this site, I think the staff can make sure that occurs.
I know personally I've had about 5 near misses. I take a right off of that street quite a bit going southbound, and I get northbound lefts occasionally coming out of that. And so I know the minute this came in, I was obviously, from personal experience, I knew if I wasn't the only one having near misses on that with those left turns out.
Okay. One more question, and this is probably for Bill. I don't know, are long-term plans for a light? Is there long-term plans for a light at 7th and Spokane? Is that?
We did have some long-term plans for the light at that location because it's currently under ITD's jurisdiction. We were moving forward, trying to get part of our one-way Mullen-Siltese couplet running through there. ITD chose not to have a light there because they thought there was conflict with that and the movements in and out of the interchange. So it's part of the I-90 business loop, and so we liked the concept. We pushed it. The transportation department really was concerned about the conflict of movements between those two. So right now, there is not a light that we're planning at that location. So if the opportunity came up where there was a difference of opinion or maybe different transportation engineers at the transportation department, we might sit down and say, okay, does this make sense at this point? Let's take another look at it, as we do with everything.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank
Bill.
you.
Any other comments, questions? Anyone wish to testify?
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Mr. Flowers is in opposition.
Bob Flowers. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. Well, you've hit on most of the reasons why I'm in opposition of this particular project. The buildings to the east of that project sound great along Spokane Street. What I'm concerned about is all that residential. The last time it was presented in front of P&Z, they showed, correct me, Mark, if I was wrong about this, but I believe it was going to be a total of 10 residents there on the west side of this. The parking is not sufficient, and that corner there at 7th and Spokane is a killer. You go there to the Chinese food place north of there, you come out of the parking lot, you get on 7th, you want to go back to Celtice, well, you're taking your life in your hands. And whether there's a long-term plan or a short-term plan, they can try to make it right only out of the coffee shop, but we've all seen what's happened, like along 41 at Popeyes. You remember the mess that was there and how people continuously, they're coming south, they turn into there. They're coming north, they turn into there. They back up traffic along there. And that continues even when you go down as far as the Numeric building and down into there. People are constantly cutting across. And I just believe that there's way too much traffic there to allow residential on the west side of this project. I don't think it's a good place for it. Put some more commercial in there, put something in there, but not residential that's going to compound the traffic and the parking problems. That's all I have.
Thanks, sir. There was no one, I should have announced, there was no one wishing to testify in favor or neutral.
Correct.
Mark, you care to rebut?
Yeah, it's Mark Latham. I'll just clarify it probably 20, 30 seconds. This actually hasn't changed from when we were in planning and zoning, but I think the confusion, to be fair, on that was that we are still undecided about, there's two rectangles basically, and currently they're noted as 10-plex apartments each, so it's 10 times 2, so there would be 20 apartments. And basically they're little squares of 5s, so they would be 5 times 2 stories of 10 times 2 is 20. The alternative on that would be 10, half the number, walk-up style townhomes. So they'd be 2-story skinny attached townhomes because you simply can't do the double. So they would be like twice the square footage of walk-up style apartments. So 10 townhomes, 20 apartments. They both work, they both meet the parking, they both fit the same footprint. We just haven't made that determination yet. And to share that with you, this is probably a second phase that will happen on that back of that lot anyway, which is why it hasn't pushed us to make that decision at this time. But
Thank you. With that, I'll close the public hearing. I would mention, though, and Mr. Flowers, I don't disagree with you on people trying to get on Celtice Way, but several years ago, the city put in, if you come out of the Golden Dragon and you head south, you catch, is that 7th Street, Bill? That Did you come back out onto Celtice with a stoplight? So there is that street that runs a block south of Celtice. Yeah, it's around the block. Now, if it's there, that doesn't mean people are going to take it, and I agree with you there. But there is an opportunity for them to get safely back out onto Celtice with a light. So again, it's there whether or not they use it. It is there. Council comments?
I'd like to just tag on to that. And I understand what Mr. Flowers is saying, but I just think that commercial would be creating more of a traffic issue in there than the residential. I mean, if there's 20 units, maybe that's 20 times a day. We know from traffic studies that we've been told that, commercial goes on pretty much all day during the day. Residential is pretty much out in the morning, back at home. So I understand what you're saying, Bob, but I'd have to disagree with that one. I think the commercial would create more of a problem than the residential.
Anybody else?
I would,
I'm sorry, Linda, 1 sec. Please, Joe.
Again, Bob, I also feel, I'm on your page too. A couple things about this that, to me, makes it tenable is one, as the mayor mentions, that street there where the street parking is basically a dead end. 2 is the light there at Compton and Celtice. And 3, being CCS, it can be 50% residential anyway with the special use permit, which so long as it meets the qualifications, we have to pass. So no matter how this goes, if I was a betting man, there's going to be residential there one way or another. This has the street frontage on the commercial, which I think looks really nice. As far as the coffee stand and the right out only, that's already been existing. We already know there's some issues there. I like the design that was presented, and hopefully that's something very similar to that is what ends up being there, because it makes it very clear that that exit is only going to be for those that are going through that drive-through, whereas now anybody in that parking lot can fire out that exit. And I think it would actually cut down on people trying to get out of that particular exit onto Spokane. So I like that design. Again, there's no guarantee it'll stay that way. But the Smocks have, as you mentioned, have done really good work. They've been really conscientious of how it affects everything around them. So this is another one of those cases, while there's no guarantees, given who the proponent and the developer is, and the location of it, and the minimized impact of what could be, I'm willing to roll the dice on this one.
Thanks. Linda?
I would 100% agree with Councilor Wolf and Malloy.
Anybody else? Steve?
Yeah, when I look at it, I see a blank piece of property there that's not being used now with freeway access right there. There's not a whole lot you can put there, but what a great location. If you look at some of our older towns in the area, and so if you go down on the Palouse, a lot of them have, right down the main street, they've got commercial on the bottom floor, and they got apartments on the upper floor, business offices, and they have residential right on the back of the street. So I think it fits in good. I had some concerns about pedestrian traffic, but I think we're going to monitor that and see how that goes, because with all that traffic, I do have concerns trying to cross Spokane Street on 7th on a busy day, especially now we got traffic turning right. But if that's something we're going to monitor on, I feel better about that. So I think the project meets all of our goals, and it's a great start for a downtown city core.
Years ago, when Mr. Smock first bought that property, I was talking with him, and I said, "What are you going to do in that property?" And he said, "What do you want me to do?" And I says, "I can't tell you what I want you to do." I says, just hopefully it's going to be something nice. And I think this potential project meets that criteria. I think it will be done nicely. I think it's going to take what was an eyesore and create a very nice establishment, hopefully, if it's developed as you think it's going to be. And again, I look forward to it. I think it's a good move. So I would entertain a motion.
I'd move to approve the smog zone change, file number RZNE-0006-2021.
Second.
Motion 4 seconds, I think 5. Further discussion?
I didn't second that.
Roll call, please.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Anthony.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Tonight, next on the agenda is unfinished business, returning ordinances and resolutions, and we have one resolution and one ordinance. The first resolution is land use hearing procedures.
I'd move to approve the resolution, land use hearing procedures.
Second.
Motion second. Discussion? Al?
I'm a little confused on this. Maybe Warren can help clarify. When is the public notified of a public hearing?
So typically, under state code, we have 2 weeks of notice that goes out the door. And so there's always a balancing act of if you're going to submit something in writing, it needs to be in, you want to leave enough time so people have a chance to consider and submit something in writing, but it also needs to be in early enough so that other parties then have a chance to review that and rebut it. So it becomes a balancing act. Under our previous rules, we set a deadline of Friday at 5 p.m., which becomes a little bit problematic because we want to get the council packet out to y'all before Saturday is one problem. The other being, if you have a special call meeting like we just did on Monday, that makes it incredibly difficult to make sure that we're allowing people enough time to review information that's been submitted at 5 p.m. on a Friday before a Monday hearing. And so we've, instead of pegging it to a Friday at 5, we've tried to have a number of days before the hearing. That way there's always going to be, no matter if you have a special meeting on a Tuesday or a Monday or a Thursday, you're going to have the same number of days before that the information needs to be submitted so that everybody has a chance to go look at it.
Does the public get the same information that we do in our packet?
We attempt to. So what we try to do is as information comes in, it goes on the website so that people can access it. And when we send out the notices, the notice says you can go to the city's website to find more information. And we try to keep that updated so people can look at that information and provide comment based on that information.
I just wanted to make sure that the public had ample time to review what it is before, so they're not getting it on Friday like we do with the packet, and all of a sudden they go, wait a minute, this isn't what I thought it was.
Yeah, so it's a balancing act, and when we send the notice out, we want to make sure that everything that we have at that time is posted on the website. So if somebody gets that mailer, they can go to that website that they're told about, and they can pull up the application, they can pull up the staff report, they can pull up any of the submittals that we'd received up to that point in time.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification.
Roll call, please.
Anthony?
Aye.
Wolf?
Aye.
Borders?
Aye.
Thorson?
Aye.
Malloy?
Aye.
Wilhelm?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next item up is Title 18 Code Change Ordinance.
Move to place the ordinance, Title 18, Code Change, on its first and only reading by title only while under suspension of the rules.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Wolf?
Aye.
Borders?
Aye.
Thorson?
Aye.
Malloy?
Aye.
Wilhelm?
Aye.
Anthony?
Aye.
Motion passes. Mr. Wilson.
An ordinance amending sections of Title 18 zoning, the municipal code of the city of Post Falls, Kootenai County, Idaho, repealing and replacing 1812.010 definitions, amending 18.16010 A3 medium density residential, amending 1816.010 B1 limited commercial, repealing and replacing 1820.030 land use table, repealing and replacing 1820.040 official bulk emplacement regulations table, amending 1820.080 B1, planned unit development PUD maximum residential density, amending 1824.020 general standards, amending 1824.030 A2 accessory dwelling units, amending 1824.030 D multifamily performance standards, amending 1824.040 commercial and industrial performance standards, amending 1824.070 parking, amending 1824.080 landscaping, amending 1836.090 sign permit requirements and administration, repealing conflicting ordinances, providing severability, providing for the publication of this ordinance by summary, and providing an effective date.
Move to approve the ordinance, Title 18, Code Changes, to direct the clerk to assign the appropriate number and that it be published by summary only.
Second.
Motion second. Discussion? Shannon, please take the roll.
Borders?
Aye.
Thorson?
Aye.
Malloy?
Aye.
Wilhelm?
Aye.
Anthony?
Aye.
Wolf?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. New business tonight, we have none. Next item up is citizens' issue, and this section of the agenda is reserved for citizens wishing to address the council regarding city-related issues that are not on the agenda. Come on forward. Name for the record, please.
Mike Pelissero.
Mike, I did know how to pronounce your name if I had to, just so you know.
That's maybe not good. I've been here too much, then that's a possibility. So I apologize for that. when I've come in and spoke, I've tried to make sure that it's something I either have knowledge of or have researched some. Just because I don't have a title behind my name or half the alphabet doesn't mean I don't have some knowledge of it or haven't tried to experience or do some research. You know, this is the information age, and you can learn about anything online, including get a diploma on something. At a recent hearing, the people were accused of coming up with some arbitrary number. I personally felt the better response would have been to ask, where did you come up with that number? And it's funny you should ask, because I have some information I'd like to pass out, if I may, on future developments. Some time ago, I randomly called a local engineer, not affiliated with anything I was doing, and asked for a general number used to calculate vehicle trips per day for residential developments. He said, since we live in an area with a little public transportation and very few things within walking distance, he uses the number 9.7. I thought that was kind of high, so from there I went online to start doing a little more research and stuff. I have a packet I've kind of put together for you to follow along on my approach.
We thought you had it all memorized.
On pages 1 and 2, it's titled, How Many
Make
Trips
sure
Does
that
the
we
Average
have from
Household
the-
Generate? And that's 10. It is the simplest explanation I found of that number. It's from the city of Apple Valley, Minnesota. I did the exercise on page 2 and found it was about right on the money. My neighbors have 3 driving-age kids at home, and I bet their number is about off the chart. Page 3 is a printout I found, and I highlighted on the bottom of the graph from the Trip Generation Manual, 10th edition, Institute of Traffic Engineers. I highlighted the average rate they state, which is 9.44. As you can see, it says vehicle trips versus dwelling units. It also shows the number of studies as 159, and the average number of dwelling units was 264. I'd be inclined to believe that with that kind of research, that's not an arbitrary number. The 4th page is a worksheet from a subdivision in New Braunfels, I think that was Texas, where they were setting up the, they're submitting it for a worksheet from planning to completion, various things. They said in there they used the number 9.52 also highlighted. And they also referenced the Trip Generation Manual. The 5th and 6th pages are from the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality. They look at vehicle trips per day to assess the pollutant load on stormwater dry wells that eventually seep into the groundwater below. They break it down into blocks of greater or less than 1,000 trips per day. As you see highlighted on page 6, a planned unit development with 104 dwelling units is 1,000 trips per day. If you put that 104, they're basically using 9.61. There are pages and pages, and I kind of wonder if anybody is thinking about that for our Rathrum and Prairie Aquifer, of all those dry wells that are going to be out there someday and seeping down into that dry well. There's pages and pages on it, but I think that the number that's used of almost 10 is not an arbitrary number and fairly close. Kind of changing topics, many people came into recently and spoke. Many of them obviously do not like speaking in public, but they did it anyway. One lady who said they moved here because to retire for peace and quiet. Another one talking about her young children safely going to school. Both of those are so nervous about talking, you could see they were about ready to cry. Another young kid who worked at ACE, he didn't know exactly what to say, but he was in there, and they're all speaking from their heart, trying to tell you something. But did we really care? And that's how I wonder if some of them felt like. I'd like to call your attention to the city website and your bio statements. I would like to ask that if you were arrested right now for your actions matching your statements, would there be enough evidence to convict you? Are you truly preserving the excellent quality of life we enjoy? Do we really think about how the decisions we make today will affect this area, not just for years, but forever? Do we really want the citizens to participate, or do we just want us to sit here like spectators and say nothing? If you don't care what they have to say, then just be honest and say so. Citizen involvement means taking the time to come to these meetings and be heard. If you are proud to be part of building the future of Post Falls, will you be proud of the future Post Falls you built? Are you mindful of the beautiful area we live in and all of the outdoor activities we have? When they are gone, there is no bringing them back. I see houses being approved everywhere. Where are the jobs? How come the developers' property rights matter? Are we enriching the quality of life in Post Falls? Are we preserving the natural beauty of our area? Is Post Falls still an attractive and safe place to live?
Mike, you almost done?
I'm sorry, 2 more sentences. Is what happening to this city how you want to be remembered? It's never too late to do the right thing. it's not only mine, but your great-grandchildren too, that will only hear stories about how beautiful this place once was. Thank you.
Shannon, I will give you this copy for records. Next item up, administrative staff reports. Update on barking dog issue. I was looking at the officers, we're going to our attorney.
It's going to me. So quickly, we had a public comment at the last council meeting regarding prosecution and police response to barking dog complaints. So I wanted to give you a little bit of background, what we do and how many cases we get sort of on an annual basis. So over the past year, the PD has responded to some, call it 330 or so barking dog animal noise complaints. The vast majority of those are resolved without entering into the criminal justice system. Currently, there is about 4 cases that are active at the moment, meaning that they just haven't been closed out. It doesn't mean that they're going anywhere, it just means that they haven't been closed out. Give you some examples of what that looks like. In one case, the reporting party reported a barking German Shepherd next door that was a constant ongoing issue. The officers advised the reporting party to obtain video evidence of the offense to support a finding of probable cause, which would justify a citation. To date, no video evidence has been received. Another matter, reporting party complained of dogs constantly barking, wanted to sign a citation. Again, no video evidence. The law enforcement left a warning with the offender. Another instance, law enforcement responded to a complaint and found the dogs barking. Homeowner wasn't home, so they left a card on the door. Came back by later. The dogs were inside, lights were out. So that's kind of where that one ended. We know that PD, when they respond to most things, and this is true of barking dogs, they try to resolve this as quickly as they can and in a way that hopefully resolves the neighborhood conflict. So they typically try to work this out without it escalating. Examples where that may come up, they may work out with the dog owner to take the dog inside during certain hours and put a bark collar on, those types of things. As I said, the vast majority of these are resolved without citations. Part of that is because that's the quickest and the most expeditious and probably the right way to resolve most things. Partly it's also because once you get into the criminal justice system, that it becomes incredibly difficult to sustain a citation. I want to read to you briefly the language of our code dealing with barking dogs, and it requires that the animal to be making a disturbance, excuse me, that is continued and repeated howling, barking, whining, or other utterances which cause annoyance, disturbance, or discomfort to reasonable neighbors or reasonable other people in the proximity to the premises where the animal is kept. So the things that we have to prove if we go to court, it's not just that a dog was barking. We have to show that it was continued and repeated barking. So that becomes difficult. We need to be able to make sure that this isn't a one-off situation. We need to be able to show whose dog is it, which dog is it. If it's in a neighborhood where there's multiple dogs, we need to make sure that we're getting the right spot. We also need to prove up that it would be an annoyance or disturbing to a reasonable neighbor. So if it's someone who's unreasonable or responding unreasonably, that's not a basis that we can do much with. So those are the things that we wrestle with, and we have to be able to prove those to a jury because this is a misdemeanor citation. So it is difficult to do that. It doesn't say that we can't do it, and it doesn't say that we don't try to do it. It's just to make that case possible, we typically need to have evidence that it's an ongoing situation. Probably a decent example of that would be if you have video, date stamp that happened on this night, happened on this night, happened on this night. That way we can ID, okay, it's this dog, it's happening repeatedly. That's the basis for a successful prosecution. Our prosecutors, they have an ethical obligation not to pursue cases that they don't think they can make stick. So we don't try to waste time on cases that we're not going to get anywhere with. We have communicated with the police department what we need. We have in the past taken these kind of cases, and our new prosecutor, I talked with her repeatedly about this over the past week. She's perfectly comfortable taking these types of cases. We just need to make sure that we're in a situation where we're not wasting the officer's time and the court's time. That's.
You mentioned oftentimes these are resolved without issue. And I think of two examples. One, we actually, my whole life, I've lived out of the area for 2 years, and I had a neighbor tell us that our dog was barking. We were gone. We didn't know it. We left from that point on. We left the dog inside. I didn't know it until they told me. Another issue was I had several years ago where we are now, they had built a house and a big pile of dirt, and their dog stood on top of that pile and barked nonstop until the people came home. So I addressed it with them. They put the dog in the house. So oftentimes it can be resolved, but oftentimes they'll still bark. So I appreciate the fact that our prosecutor, our police will look into it, and our prosecutor, if it's a case that has merit, will consider prosecuting it. So I can't, Bob. I'm sorry. So anyway, appreciate the follow-up on that. Mayor and council comments. I just want to, I wish I could share a voicemail I received with all the councilors. I had this little tiny voice call me, 3 weeks, a month ago. And his mom was coaching him in the background. But he wants to plant an acorn. And he wants to know if we have a place in the park where he can plant an acorn. And this little kid was so sweet and so courteous, and I listened to his mom talking to him and coaching him. So we referred it off, and one of our employees has been sick and has not been able to get back to him. I got another call from him yesterday. The sweet little voice saying, I didn't know if you needed a reminder or if you just forgot. And I mentioned that because there are so many calls that you receive that aren't pleasant to deal with. And there are calls that are, very nice to visit with the folks about. I had a couple of those this week as well. But as I told this little guy's mom, I don't know how old he is. I'm looking forward to meeting him. But to hear that sweet little voice with so much politeness, asking me a favor but keeping me on task, was truly one of the nicest phone calls I've ever received since I've been mayor. So I just had to share it. But and when he does get a location where he can plant the acorn in one of our parks, I'm going to be sure and be there for him. So there are some wonderful little kids out there. Council comments. Linda.
I would just like to thank the Post Falls Chamber for putting on the candidate forum that they put on, I guess it was Monday. All these days are running together. Anyway, it was videotaped, so folks will be able to watch that on the Post Falls Chamber website, I guess it is, on the 27th from 5:30 to 9:30, something like that. I think it'll run, and then it will run off and on, I think, until Election Day, so everyone can see that forum.
Thank you.
And thank you for the chamber for doing that.
Yeah. Lynn.
I just have a comment regarding the flashing crossings. Today, twice, once on Spokane Street South and once on Spokane Street North, I seen people attempting to cross the street at the crosswalk, not pushing the button. They get partway out there, cars are not stopping, they're just going nonstop. And then in one case, the one on North Spokane Street, the lights were actually flashing and cars were just zipping through there. So I just think we need some more education. The more of those crossings that we get out there with the flashing lights, we need some more community education that says, folks, you need to push the button if you're going to cross the street. That's going to help for certain. You aren't going to stop the guy that just flies through there unless it's, but it's a concern for me as the more of these we get, people just aren't paying attention. And I think it's primarily because we haven't had the flashing lights in the past, and so it's a new thing, but we need to get some more education.
I've been stating that ever since the Rotary Club put in a crossing up on Chase. And when I head for work, especially now if it's dark, and you get kids crossing, and I don't know if it's not cool or what, but they won't push the button. And it's like, I agree with you, it's education. So, because it makes a huge difference when you can see it.
Yep.
And there are signs on those that say press a button. I'm thinking there's various ways of education. One is to see flashing lights in your rearview mirror because it is illegal to keep going on a crosswalk when there are people there. But bigger signs that say press the button, I just don't think that the young people, the kids, are going to be over there reading that. But if there were signs on it, not just the kids, but for grown-ups too. So I don't think they need to be on there forever. But while people are getting used to the fact that it's not magic, you know, that those lights just aren't going to come on.
All comes down to education. You got to learn to do it. So,
I got a question on that. What time do the kids go to school? I mean, I really don't know because I don't have
In the
any
morning,
kids.
about
for-
8:30, 8:15,
I
they
think when you
start.
get over the middle schools, junior highs, high schools, they go earlier, I think.
Yeah, about 7:30, they start putting the, you go down Spokane Street and the light is flashing, it's a school zone.
Okay, about 7:30? I got
Are
nothing,
you gonna
I
be
got
a
nothing
patrol
else.
guard?
I am.
Be a
I'm gonna
volunteer.
go down there and, hey, kids, push the button. Why not?
Mr. Polisaro, I just wanted to thank you for this. As much as I like to think I know everything, as my wife reminds me often I don't. So this obviously took some work. It's good data. Whenever we can get information like this, it does help affect our decisions. So I do appreciate you taking the time to put this together and present it to us. And anytime anybody out there, wants to use some actual scientific study data to help us along, it's always welcome. So thank you for that.
It's Polisaro.
Polisaro.
Cero.
Dang it.
Polisaro.
Mr. Polisaro.
I only mispronounced his name 4 or 5 times before I figured it out. So,
And I'll just follow up on Carrie's comment on Ironwood. Going from the 600-700 buildings over to the hospital, they have some pretty good-sized sandwich boards there. It says, please press the button before crossing. And so I've seen that's actually pretty effective. Most of the people do, because you can't miss the sandwich board sitting there. It's good size, and it's again, it's education, but those sandwich boards are pretty effective on Ironwood.
I wonder what you do at
Counselor
the
Wolf can
hospital.
wear
Do you
a
wear those sandwich boards?
Well,
You could put me out there.
Thank you.
Because you need another job.
We do not need an executive session.
We do not.
Next motion is?
Adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Need adjourned. Thank you.